Thanks for watching this video. Who makes our energy? If you look at the news today, you might think that there are certain people that make and give us our energy. But all of the energy that exists now has always existed. No one is making any new energy. Energy is abundant, and therefore I think that as we figure out ways of transforming existing energy into ways that we can utilize it, then it will be accessible to many more across the globe and at lower costs. I think that we'll be able to transform energy at the place where it needs to be consumed, which would mean we would no longer be constrained to an electrical grid. And we can do all of this and have zero emissions and utilize no toxic chemicals in the transformation of energy to stored energy that we can use. So that time is now. It's not something that is some distant future. It is possible now utilizing quite simple methods. I'd like to describe to you our abundant clean energy system. Our company is called Scalable Global Solutions. You notice our Patreon account there. This is our simple machine version. We are working also on more advanced versions. We definitely need you to support us. I say there, be a part of a new future by taking part in history, because a system like this does not exist. At least it is not in use in the general population. I assume that it doesn't exist, but you will see that it's so simple and provides so much energy, you will wonder why it doesn't exist. If you do join our Patreon and become patrons for us, we're greatly appreciative of any type of donation you can make, or contribution rather. And that is right now the only revenue that our company is generating. But if you would also just share this video so that everyone can see that we can make abundant clean energy. Well, actually, I already said that we're not making energy. We can transform what already exists as abundant clean energy into energy that we can utilize. So the machine, as I mentioned, we have some more advanced types in development. It's very simple to construct. It can be built anywhere. It utilizes a tower filled with water, which we call the inner chamber, and it connects with a shorter pool, or the outer chamber. Due to the low cost of construction and low manpower needs, this system can be rolled out quickly to reduce the current energy supply shortages crippling the world. The machine also produces zero emissions, both in its creation and operation, and contains no toxic materials. Eventually, it can replace centralized power stations and eliminate the need for an electrical grid. While the grid is serviced well, it is more and more an Achilles heel to modern life, as it is susceptible to outages from weather, solar flares, and sabotage or acts of war. Our system utilizes principles of buoyancy, which have been well known for several thousand years, or a couple thousand anyway. It's very well known and established that the buoyant force will act on an object, and that force is equal to the volume of the fluid displaced times the density of the fluid. The force acting in the opposite direction is, of course, gravity. And if your object is lighter than the fluid it's in, then it's going to have an upward force. Here I show horsepower, which basically connects a watt or 745.7 watts with 1 horsepower. So I'll be talking about mechanical work. I'm talking about watts, and that shows you there that 1 horsepower is moving 550 pounds a foot in 1 second. I want to talk about the storage of this energy that we are transforming. In the good old days, the grandfather clocks, the grander they were, the taller they were, and the weights were heavier and had longer travel. That's how you would pull the chain down, lift the weights, and the clock would run for a good period of time. That's using a pure gravity system, which worked well. But then they developed a different style of clock. They call it a gingerbread clock. And then it can be put on your mantle or in your kitchen easily. Didn't take up a huge amount of room. The way they accomplished that was to use a flat torsion spring, which is a clock spring. Basically, it's like a wind-up doll, if you will. You wind up the clock with a key, and then that torsion spring releases energy over time and powers the mechanisms. There are some new ways that are being utilized, and they're in concert with renewable energy sites where, since the production, I'm sorry, I keep getting myself tangled up, the transformation of energy to something we can use, um, it's not steady at a lot of renewable sites. The sun's not always shining, the wind's not always blowing, but when it is, sometimes they're producing too much. So they will store it in something like a gravity system, which is a great idea instead of using batteries. And then it's like the grandfather clock, and those weights will fall, and it's a way to store. The spring is actually a better way because it does not require all of this mass. It really just requires you to have a bunch of these clock springs around, and you can load them and take them off and move them around. It's definitely preferred to the gravity system, and this is what our system utilizes. So here I'm going to go through the operation of the machine. Here are the machine's components. The inner chamber is basically just a filled chamber with water. You could utilize a plastic pipe of a large diameter. For what I'm envisioning, we would have a rectangular or square concrete tower, basically, where you could utilize precast box sections that are in existence today, or you could construct and pour a reinforced concrete wall along the four sides. But it doesn't take any special construction. Any heavy civil contractor could construct these, and you could also build smaller versions in your yard if you wanted to, and I would love people to do that. That's the point of getting this video out, is that I do not have a working machine, but I know it will work, and I have done the numbers, and the theory is sound. I would get to build a machine, but I feel like this needs to be put out in the world for everyone to give it a try, so we can start making energy and not be beholden to those who think that they control energy, because they don't. So we have the inner chamber and the outer chamber. The outer chamber is, of course, a lot shorter there. It joins the inner chamber. The ball, which I made it look like a beach ball just for visualization purposes. We have a buoyancy cable, the bottom spindle, the outer chamber door, and the inner chamber door. And up top, there's a gravity cable and a top spindle. So this per ball, we have 2 people working at the operation. There's someone at the bottom on top, or around the door for the outer chamber, and someone on top of the inner chamber there, and you'll see why in a minute. So we do have loss in the system when we need to pull the ball back under the surface, but we can utilize energy already generated, stored to perform that. So here's step 1. With your starting position with the inner chamber door closed and the outer chamber door open. The ball is floating on the surface of the outer chamber. You clip the buoyancy cable to the ball. Step 2, you crank bottom spindle to pull the ball just under the water surface of the outer chamber. You close the outer chamber door. Step 3, with the outer chamber door closed, open the inner chamber door. Now what that does is it prevents the head pressure of the water from shooting out of the outer chamber, because the door is now closed. You can open the inner chamber door without that issue. I also showed that the inner chamber door here is a swing type, but I think it would be more practical for it to be slide. But I do think the outer chamber is probably going to be a swing type. So once the inner chamber door is opened, the ball will begin to travel to the surface of the inner chamber. Here the ball is traveling. The buoyancy cable unwinds while turning the bottom spindle. That spindle is where we will connect self-contained clock springs, basically, and store energy in them. Once they are full, you can remove them and add another one. You could charge several simultaneously, depending on the size of the spring. The idea is that homes and other businesses and wherever energy needs to be moved to, you could have a generator at that location, would put your springs on a truck, drive it there, install the springs into that generator, and it would probably handle a bank of springs. And then you get your emptied springs, if you will, and take them back to this location, which is not going to be far away, because you can build these quite easily, and we would need a number of them around. But the idea of storing energy in a spring, doing that here at this site, and then distributing the springs out to power generators that are in homes and businesses for their energy needs. You can see you don't need a grid. You completely don't need any type of central energy producing station like a coal plant or nuclear power plant, or even wind farms or solar farms or a hydro dam. All of those require a grid. They require energy. They transform energy at specific locations that are often very expensive to build, and in themselves often destroy the environment. This can be done anywhere, at any time. It doesn't require that anything renewable be happening other than the fact that there's gravity, there's water, and there's buoyancy. It's that simple. So the ball travels to the surface. The cable unwinds while turning the bottom spindle. The bottom spindle stores energy in a mainspring, or could directly turn a generator. And maybe that is what we start with. If folks want to prove this system, again, I do not have a working model. I was heading that way, but I realized that I think the world needs this now. This could be easily constructed and a generator attached to it, and to get the ball rolling, if you will, pun intended. Step 5, the ball hits the surface of the inner chamber. You unclip the buoyancy cable and wind it back onto the bottom spindle using a small amount of energy from the mainspring. Step 6, you clip the gravity cable to the ball. Once the buoyancy cable is fully retracted, you close the inner chamber door. So there it is, the inner chamber door is closing. The outer chamber door is still closed, but now the buoyancy cable is completely retracted. Step 7, you open the outer chamber door. You push the ball over the edge of the inner chamber. The ball travels to the surface of the outer chamber while unwinding the gravity cable and turning the top spindle, which also stores energy in a mainspring or turns a generator. So we are transforming energy on the way up using buoyancy, and we are transforming energy on the way down using gravity, and we are storing that energy in a spring. Again, there are no toxic materials. There's nothing complicated about this. This is using very old methods. So the ball travels to the surface of the outer chamber, unwinding the gravity cable, turning the top spindle, which stores energy in a mainspring or generator. And I already said that, but you'll see I'm going to go through this a few times because while it is simple, it's important to understand how it works. Step 8, unclip the gravity cable, retract it with a small amount of energy stored in the mainspring, clip the buoyancy cable to the ball, and return to step 1. I'm going to go through this just a couple of times for clarity. Step 1, here you are, your starting position. Ball's floating on the surface of the outer chamber. The inner chamber door is closed. Clip your buoyancy cable to the ball. You use some energy to pull the ball under just under the surface of the chamber door, and then close it. And the inner chamber door. The ball will begin to travel to the surface of the inner chamber. And this is a simple depiction. Of course, it can be constructed so that when that door is open, the ball will travel up, because I know that looking at it, it's like, well, will the ball move? It will be constructed so that the ball, as soon as that door is open, will start to move up. Step 4, the ball travels to the surface, buoyancy cable unwinds while turning bottom spindle. Bottom spindle stores energy in the mainspring, or it can directly turn a generator. So here our ball is going back to the surface. It gets to the surface. A laborer unclips the ball, clips it to the gravity cable. The buoyancy cable is retracted. The inner chamber door starts to close. Gravity cable is connected. The ball's kicked over the side. It comes down. The outer chamber door is opening now that the inner chamber door is closed. And then step 8, unhook the gravity cable, connect the buoyancy cable, and rinse and repeat. So this system does require a couple of employees per, if you look at this, there would be 2 employees. Now envisioning a 12-ball installation where you would have 4 employees working the outer chambers at the bottom and 4 at the top working the inner chambers. I believe that they could work 3 balls at a time, unclipping and clipping. So basically you would work 1 wall at the bottom of the person, and then 1 wall, or in the top with another. And then so with 4 sides, we've got 8 employees. This is unskilled or lesser skilled labor, if you will. We would be creating jobs, a tremendous amount of jobs, and generating electricity, and they don't have to be nuclear engineers. All of it need to do is be able to do some manual labor of clipping and unclipping our float, the ball, and keeping that going all day. Now they're going to have to work all day. It's going to be 3 shifts, and I do show some of this in the numbers. I'm calculating about a 12 hours of production per installation. But it will create jobs for folks that currently have a difficult time finding a job in our job market. which is difficult to enter if you don't have the technical skills that a lot of jobs require. These jobs are going to provide a living wage. They're going to fill a void that exists right now as far as work that folks can do. So here it is again. The ball goes under the surface, the outer door closes, inner chamber door opens, up goes the ball. We're transforming energy, utilizing buoyancy. We get to the top, swap cables, drop her over the side, transforming energy with gravity, drop. And we just do this over and over. And this is the way this runs all day long. Now you imagine you have 12 of those. You're storing some energy. You're transforming existing energy and storing it in a spring. Those springs can be loaded and unloaded. They're loaded at this facility, easily driven on a truck somewhere, loaded into someone's generator on the side of their house or business, and it keeps that generator going. Power outages are a thing of the past. Possible attacks on the national electrical grid are the thing of the past. Significant permitting to build a hydro dam. Why would we even build a hydro dam? It floods all of our wonderful wetlands. We should never, I don't think we would build another hydro dam, but we have them. We'll tear them down. Well, I mean, not all at once. This has got to be phased in. Well, you start by building these installations out on the outskirts of the grid and work your way in. You can pull up all the copper and repurpose it for these generators. The grid can be consumed, and we do not need to have massive electrical grids. We do not need production of energy at central locations. We can produce energy at the place it needs to be consumed. And I just often fall into that producing energy. We're not producing energy, we're transforming it from one form to another, storing it such that we can power a generator to power our devices. We like devices. We need electricity. But what's happening now is completely insane, that a few people control so much of the energy in our world. Well, that's not going to last. Energy is everywhere. They can't control that forever, and that's coming to an end. So here's where I work the numbers. This is where I need people that are smarter than me to help me figure out if I'm wrong. Because right now, I think that these installations produce a tremendous amount of electricity, or they transform a lot of energy. So what I have done is my computations I've got, that's basically a big styrofoam ball, if you will, that's got reinforcement straps and connection points for clipping. The ball diameter is 1.5 meters. Even styrofoam's pretty heavy when it comes to being that size, so it's 110 pounds. But still, it's floating. A person can move it around. They could use a hook to grab it and clip. I mean, it's not that hard to visualize. The inner chamber travel distance is 15 meters. So these things are, say about 50 feet high. Now that's a lot of water. That's a big facility. We're talking about one of the a bigger facility. But it's not a skyscraper. It'll need deep foundations, but it's not anything it's not a nuclear reactor. It's not a coal-fired or gas or fossil fuel or whatever fired plant. It's a box of water with floats in it. You see, it's just completely different way of thinking about things. I have the travel time in the water here is 30 seconds. So I did some calculations on drag and figuring out what would the maximum velocity of the float be as it was traveling up. And the fluid mechanics on it is pretty significantly advanced if you want to get in that far, but I'm assuming that the average ball velocity is going to be about a half a meter per second. It could be more, it could be less, but I think for these purposes and for others to get involved and help me do the numbers, I think that's a reasonable assumption. And again, it's an assumption based on a lot of calculations that I had run. So here we've got the force from gravity. So that's the force acting on the ball from gravity. The buoyancy force there shown is the basically the force that's generated by the ball displacing water. So I don't have the volume on here, but it's the volume of the 1.5 meter diameter sphere times the density of water, which is 1 gram per cubic centimeter. So there I've got the upward force, which is the net between the buoyancy and gravitational force, and that's 1281.9 newtons. So I take that, and my work done is the force times the distance, which the distance of the ascent is 15 meters. The distance of and then my joules tree, the joules from that is 19,229.2. That's from the buoyancy ascent. Then the drop to the outer chamber, that's the gravity drop. That takes 1.6 seconds, and you gain 759.1 joules. So you get a little bit from the drop, and that's probably enough to, it just reduces your losses. So there's going to be losses in the system. They're pretty significant to calculate. So I took some what I feel like are conservative approaches to trying to get to a reasonable number. The outer chamber travel distance, that takes 2.8 seconds of travel time in the water. And what that is that's pulling the ball down under the surface in the outer chamber so you can close that door. So there you're going to lose 3,625.9 joules. But the summation of the joules from the buoyancy ascent, the gravity drop, and then the loss you get for pulling the ball under the water is 16,362.3 joules. The travel time, based on my assumption of ascent and then the gravity drop, all totals 34.4 seconds. I'm saying that a conservative cycle time for one ball to make the cycle would be 2 minutes. I think that gives adequate time for clipping of the ball at the bottom and the top and pulling the ball into the surface. So a 2-minute cycle time. The power here is 136.4 watts. So that's my joules divided by my cycle time. Basically joules per second is the watt. If I assume 75% loss from the springs, the cables, spindles, etc., then I'm still storing 34.1 watts per second in a spring. That means per hour, I'm storing 122.7 kilowatts. That's 3 shifts, but considering a 50% downtime and 12 hours of total production time. And again, this is just for one float. This is for one ball. So storing per day, we've got 1,472.6 kilowatts per year, 274 working days. We're going to give folks plenty of time off. It's going to be a good job. We're looking at 403,495.5 kilowatts. So when you utilize more than one float at this location, which we would do, say if you had 12, I'm thinking 3 along each wall, you are storing 4,841,945.7 kilowatts per year per location. The average household uses 12,000 kilowatts, or they use 12,000 kilowatt hours per year. So the amount of energy stored at our location here, which why I consider one of the bigger installations, would power 403 residents for a year. One of these installations harnesses more energy than a 1.5 megawatt wind turbine annually. Installation cost for one location in a first year operation is about $2.5 million. There's no lead time on components, no significant lead time. Most heavy civil contractors could construct an installation in less than 1 month. And we're not talking about highly machined bearings for wind turbines that are on back order for months and months and months. We're not talking about a $25 billion nuclear power plant that doesn't even work yet. We're not talking about flooding wetlands in order to create force to turn turbine. You see, the issue with the hydro dam is the pressure is higher, the more water you have, obviously. That creates a high force at the bottom. That's what they use to push to turn the turbine. You're utilizing 1 point force. You're utilizing the greatest force, which is at the bottom. But there's force acting throughout that water column, and it is not being transformed. Buoyancy allows you to transform that energy without building a dam. We're going to be building rectangular boxes of water everywhere, have folks employed clipping and unclipping floats and making, transforming energy and storing it into springs that will power generators. It's going to revolutionize the way we do things. This is the simple machine. We have plans for other machines, but this one's got to get out there. And the way things are going, I just had to stop and do this video and hope that someone believes me that it will work. We got to try something. And I think this is a really good thing to try. So please share this with everybody. Somebody can go out and start building it. I would if I had the resources. I'm a startup. You've seen my Patreon there on the front page there, and I'll come to that again. But please, if you would be a patron of ours, that would be tremendously helpful. What is abundant, clean energy storage that's mobile, that employs people, that doesn't create emissions? If it works, what is that worth? We've got other plans. We've got other ideas. Please provide us with your support, and you'll see other good things out of this company. Pros and cons. The pros: it's a new way to harness energy. It provides power at the place of need, which, by the way, means that you can be in an undeveloped part of some impoverished place in the world. You can transform energy there into energy that they can consume and power devices and not be disconnected from the rest of us. Well, that's what power, that's creating power. That's creating power for those people who have not been able to, and that and oftentimes are taken advantage of because of their situation, but they may be sitting on all of the great metals that everybody loves to have in their devices. Well, those folks, they're going to get plugged in. They're going to get educated. What is all this worth? If it works, here, this simple machine, take it, have it, go make it. I've got other plans, but I need support. We need to support everybody. We all need to support each other. This is tough. We're in a tough time right now, and we all know that. You guys got to believe me that this will work. Please share this with your friends. Share it with someone who makes stuff in their backyard. Have them go and make this thing. Get it out there. It needs to be rolled out in a big way in order to offset the energy issues that are being created by those who think they can control energy. It's a complete mirage. They can't control energy. They never made any energy. No one can make energy. It's already been made. All we got to do is transform it. This is going to change everything. It must go out now. Otherwise, we're going to end up destroying ourselves. I'm talking too long on this video. I need to upload it so people can start seeing it. Pros: cheap to construct, easy to construct, creates zero emissions, no toxic materials, works anywhere, does not rely on renewable sources, easy to operate, provides jobs for lesser skilled workers, scalable in multiple ways. Simple version discussed is open source. Have at it. The cons: open source concept needs verification. No working model. New concepts face adoption resistance. It's now or never. And maybe this thing won't work, but I'm not aware of anything that will transform energy using buoyancy and then get some gain from gravity. Where is the significant loss? We don't have to split the atom to boil water. We don't have to burn anything. We don't have to burn anything to boil water to turn the turbine. It's ridiculous that we're splitting the atom to do that. We have now gone beyond that point. Energy is there. We just have to transform it. It's everywhere. No one controls it. No one owns it. That's the thing of the past. They just don't know it yet. Patreon membership. Please support Scalable Global Solutions by becoming one of our patrons at www.patreon.com/scalable. And again, please read our page, which describes additional solutions under development, which focus on several core global problems. An abundance of energy exists, and eventually it will seem foolish that we ever had to pay for it. I believe that. We believe abundant clean energy is the first step toward an equitable future. We believe the ACES machine is the solution for our current world and certainly our current time. No other solution exists that can be constructed in a short amount of time and on a scale large enough to offset current manufactured energy shortages. You can't do that with any other known way to transform energy. It would take too long to try to accomplish it with any of the ways that transform renewable energy. Forget about nuclear. This is it. This is what we need to build now to offset what is being created in this world by dictators. This solution will also provide an abundance of jobs to lesser skilled workers. This presentation covers the simple machine version, which we're giving to the world. There are more advanced versions in development. We have other solutions for core global problems in development as well. Be part of a new future by taking part in history. Your support will make it possible to further develop, enhance, and distribute our solutions globally. Thank you very much for listening to this. I am confident that this system will work. I'm not a numbers guy necessarily. I'm more of a concept person. That's why I ask that you please try this. Don't give me any money. Go and people start trying it and building it. That would be a great thing. I do want to enhance it and make other improvements to it and develop other systems that include it. So I would appreciate support. Again, what is the value of this thing? If it works, you can't put a value on it. It's trillions of dollars. Well, here you can have it. But please support me because I do have other ideas that are also going to benefit the world if they work. If they don't work, then hey, I tried. I'm giving it my best. That's what we all got to do right now. Even if you just hear this message and you're like, this guy tried, but he didn't know what he was doing. Well, hey, that should be encouraging because there are people out there that are trying. Because we are entering a new age and the old ways are passing off and we are going to make it through this. Thanks again for listening. Have a good evening.